Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. Also April Fool's Day. We're not going to do it.
That's why I'm here.
You're here every day though. It would have been funnier if you weren't
There should have been two of me here. On Fool's Day, shit, yeah, double up on that.
I like that. I like that.
Like
I
that,
like
yeah.
the cut of your jib.
You like that?
Yeah, so that sounded dirty. But yeah, sorry if you hear something in the background. It's just like the
Lawn crew.
The lawn crew is out there outside.
Yeah.
I think they were like right around the front of the house earlier, and I could like hear them out my office window like super loud. But I think they've finished that right now.
Yeah.
But let's see. What can we talk about? Oh, I wanted to say last night. This was the weirdest fucking thing ever. It wasn't even cloudy or anything last night. Right about 10:30 or 11 o'clock when we finished watching the movies that we reviewed for our matinee show.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we had this like freak rainstorm.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere.
And I didn't even realize it was so loud that at first I didn't even realize it was rain. I thought it was a tornado.
Yeah,
And like the rain was like, it was like horizontal.
Yeah.
It was like whack, whack, whack,
Yeah.
like against the wall. It's like a fucking hurricane out there.
Kat was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and she just like ran over there because she's not scared of things really, but she
Yeah.
just like ran over there and got under the curtains so she could
Yeah.
look out the sliding glass door.
Yeah.
And then she was just like looking at that like, what the fuck is going on? It was
Yeah.
like everything was fucking blowing around. And then when I went on the trail this morning, I was like, it's a big fucking mess out there. There's fucking
Yeah.
branches
Like a
and
mini hurricane.
leaves and shit like that everywhere. Crazy. It was nice and cool out this morning though. Yesterday.
It's still cool out there.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I haven't been outside since.
When I go get the mail, it was like
about
70 degrees.
Yeah, this morning I went outside. I was like, woo.
Yeah.
Oh, what am I? Because yesterday it was like so fucking humid and yucky.
So what's on the list?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that. Oh, I also want to mention I got an email today. I don't know if like how relevant this is to everybody, but when I was talking about my board games and stuff like that before, and I have like 3 of them up. I've still been working on other ones, and like I said, by the end of this year, I kind of want to have like a whole website up because I have a whole bunch of other games that I have done that I have ready that I haven't uploaded yet. But I got a email from Gamecrafter today, and they are still like remaining open in the sense that they're still like taking orders, and they still have like customer service and stuff like that, but they're all working from home. They're just suspending. They had to close like their manufacturing factory, the thing that makes all the games for coronavirus, so they didn't want all their workers to get sick, so they had to close it down. So they're actually closing down stuff until April 24th or until further notice. They said we're still taking orders and shit like that, so if you still want to order something, then do it, but just keep in mind that you probably won't get it for a few months, like until everything comes back online. But I've been working on another game. Like I said, I have a shit ton of them finished. I've been working on one that's based on like ancient Egypt mythology. I think I'm gonna call it Curse of Neferkala. I haven't decided yet, but I've got like most of the board done and some of the other shit, so we'll see how that goes. But I have a bunch of other ones designed as well. Also, like I said, my goal was this week to start working on Faceless Villain Millennium or Faceless Villain 4 or whatever the fuck I'm gonna call it. I don't know yet. And like I said, I'm doing the outline for the first chapter, which is going to be Unsolved Murders from the year 2000. And there are so many that I'm going to have to like take a bunch out. I mean, you know what I mean? Because it's a thing where I feel bad like leaving ones out, but there's so many that there's not that many details about them. And it's like,
it's just like mentioning it, but then there's nothing there.
Right. So then it's like, I'm kind of have a thing where it's like, well, do I even want to mention it? Because it's like not so much. So I don't know. I'm either going to try, what I wanted to try to do is maybe limit it to like 12 cases per chapter or something like that, or just ones that had at least like 3 articles about them or something like that.
There's got to be enough there to write about. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. It's like, I still want it to be, like I said, I feel shitty like leaving some murders out because it seems like, some matter more than the others. But then in some ways, like a lot of murders, they don't really have much reporting about them. Because like I said, every state has, well, pretty much every state has a database of like all their cold cases, all their unsolved murders. So I've been trolling through all of those, and the vast majority of them are basically just like, hey, this person was found dead in their apartment. We don't know who the fuck did it. If you have any information, call us. Right. That's pretty much like all that's there.
Yeah. Another thing is that, the cops have the information, but they're not going to put it out.
Yeah.
Just because, because these cases are old, but they're not that old. So a lot of times, you're writing about a case and the details are going to be very sparse, but there's a lot more known about that case, just to keep the investigative techniques of the police is not to release that information.
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
So in some ways, I guess it's easier to write about older ones,
right?
Because
there's more there.
Because there's more there, and they're like, probably most of the suspects are dead at this point. So it's like it doesn't really matter. But now it's like I was reading something the other day too that, and I think I mentioned this maybe in like the foreword of one of my last books, that you would think that with better investigative techniques that more murders would get solved nowadays. No, it's not. It's less. They're like now, even though there are, in the aggregate, less murders, like crime has been going down like since the 90s, with little bobbles here and there, but in general, like the murder rate has been going down. But they're like, even with that in mind, there's still less of them solved than there was like a long time ago, which to me seems very weird because now they have DNA and everything. I'm not sure why that is exactly.
Well, a lot of people will put a lot of, they'll place a lot of weight on like technology. We'll be able to solve this with technology. We have the weapon, we have the bullet. We'll figure out, who had this gun. We have the serial numbers on it. We'll just look up the damn serial numbers. None of that true. None of it true. For instance, there were like millions of little Raven 25s made. They all had serial numbers on them. You could scratch a serial number off of it. And the guy would say, oh, they'll never know, They'll never be able to trace this gun. Yeah, you can drop acids on there, and when they punch those numbers, it'll make that number clear, even though you filed it off. You'll still be able to see it because there's more molecular density of where they punched the damn numbers.
Yeah.
Okay? So you would think, well, they have the number. Now I'll fucking find out who had the gun. Well, you run the numbers on the gun, and Raven Arms said, yeah, that one. We made that one 20 years ago, and we sold it to this distributor, something or other, and you go ask him. And then they go to that distributor and go, yeah, we sold that to California.
Well, and they don't know how many hands it's
passed
through.
And then so the last time this thing was fucking sold legally, it was sold to fucking John Brown 20 years ago. Okay?
Yeah.
Find him. Oh, and they find him. And they go, John, what did you do with that? Where were you on the night? What are you talking about? This Raven Arms pistol. Oh, I sold that 2 weeks after I bought it.
Yeah, I sold it to a friend of mine. Or it got stolen. Or there could be a million other things.
And they start going through it, and they find out this shit, man, this thing has changed hands through 300 damn people the past 20 years.
That's what I mean. I did read that
we'll never find out
that the more that a murder is committed with a gun, the more likely you are to get away with it, obviously, because it's like much easier.
Yeah.
Because it obviously strangling somebody or stabbing them or something leaves a lot more DNA evidence.
Right. And then they think that, well, they'll be able to see the rifling marks on the bullet. Boy, that's a laugh. They'll be able to find out how many grooves and how many lands were in the rifling, which might narrow it down to the brand of the gun. But the actual exact little scrapes and the things that try to line it up, that's bullshit because those little scratches inside that barrel are changing every time you fucking shoot the pistol.
Yeah.
They'll slowly change, you know what I mean? Like the little micro grooves inside that are being left behind on those bullets changes every 20 shots, make it unrecognizable. That's just something that they use in a courtroom to sell some shit, you know what I mean? When they have the pistol and they have the bullet and they have the body and they have the suspect, maybe they can somehow find a place where a little segment of that bullet might match up with a couple of scratches inside of a barrel. That doesn't mean that those scratches inside the barrel made those lines on that bullet, though.
But I mean,
doesn't mean that.
I feel like if you have like a bunch of other clues like leading toward the suspect, and that's like another thing, then okay.
It's the whole weight of the case.
But if that's the only
that
thing,
one thing, that's not enough.
I mean, that's almost kind of like saying, hey, this is the same handwriting as the killer had, which. There is some truth to that, but it's a very, like, handwriting analysis in general is a very, like, nebulous kind of art to it.
Yeah.
So
it's the same thing with trying to piece together
what
bullet came out of what pistol.
You really
very
need, like,
nebulous.
a lot of circumstantial evidence that gathers into, like, one thing.
And an awesome lawyer that can lie his ass off. That always helps. And especially if you got it where a $1 million lawyer, because that $1 million lawyer will take $10,000 and help bribe that judge. That's something that people don't know. That's exactly what's going on.
But yeah, so I was reading that the way that like a lot fewer murders are solved nowadays, which seems counterintuitive. I was also like I was watching this thing the other day where they were talking, because I watch like a lot of true crime stuff, obviously, because it's a big interest that I have. Some people were saying, they were talking about why late 60s, 70s, 80s were like the heyday of the serial killer. And they were wondering whether the same thing might happen again, like 10, 15 years down the line when this particular generation gets to be into their 20s, that if the same thing will happen. Because they were saying stuff like the reason, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, obviously, why the 70s and the 80s. I think the peak was in 87 for serial killings. But, and it's been going down ever since then. It's a very, very tiny, fragment of, the murders that are committed. But they thought that it might have something to do not only with, society as a whole becoming more mobile, people moving around more, people doing, high-risk behaviors like hitchhiking and stuff, which obviously is a factor. They were also wondering, too, whether, they said, now these were kids that grew up and their fathers and grandfathers had been, in World War I, World War II, and they were wondering if, like, when their dads and, grandparents came back from these wars that had seen these, like, horrible things and everything, if it had some kind of impact on the way that the children grew up. Like, maybe their dads were kind of, like, more emotionally distant or more physically abusive or something like that that would contribute. And like I said, there's a zillion other factors, and
I doubt it.
There's not sure, but they're just wondering if that might have been, something like a factor in why there were so many serial killers around that period. Because a lot of serial killers do seem to have like real emotionally distant parents or physically or mentally abusive fathers.
I think it'd be more likely it was something kind of like something inherited, like epigenetics, something like that.
Well, I do think that there's a genetic component, sure. But I definitely think that it's a combination of the two things.
Well, in epigenetics, in epigenetics, theoretically, what you're talking about is that the stress that a father or the mother might be going through can somehow impact an unborn child.
Yeah,
so, you know what I mean? They were saying that maybe a mother who was under a lot of stress, that's when she's gestating a kid, the genome of the child could be slightly modified, so it's born with a higher maybe with a higher propensity towards aggression or a higher propensity towards like histrionic behavior, that kind of shit. So,
well, that is because stress does physically affect your body by like releasing cortisol and things like that. And sure, it could like have some kind of impact. Like I said, I don't think that people that turn out to be serial killers, I don't think it's entirely genetic.
I don't buy any of that shit anyway, though. I have my own theory. Leaded gasoline, I think, had something to do with it.
Well, and I'm not saying that that wasn't a factor, because it might have been.
And another thing I think it was is that it was on the surface of it, the society at that time was very sexually repressive and repressed. So young people did not grow up with too much, what do you call it, like an understanding of a normal sexual behavior.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you start getting perversions.
Yeah.
And if the kid isn't popular enough to date and find a, date a member, like girls or whatever, he might get pissed off and become what you would call today like an incel.
Yeah.
And then he's a perverted incel, which might, you start coming up with guys that have these weird BDSM type fucking perverted fetishes.
Yeah, because look at like BTK and stuff like that.
And it's not something. And then there's no place to like. There's no scene to where they can go out and fucking. You know what I mean? Go to a fucking
and just indulge it in a healthy
show
way.
And get it out of his system. They don't have that. So he's holding this in as like a dark secret. And
and it becomes
malignant. And he goes, "Fuck it, I'm gonna grab that girl. I'm gonna torture her."
Yeah, I definitely think that's a big factor.
That's what
too.
I think it is.
That's why I think that because I could see what
it was what you would call today a rape culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could see what the authors were saying. It's like, could it happen again, when this current generation gets to a certain age? But I don't think that's going to be the case because, like you said, I think that there was a large factor of like all of this stuff being sexually repressed. People feeling like, I have this particular fetish or I have this particular sexual proclivity and I'm the only one in the world and I'm really weird, and it just kind of like was like a self-loathing kind of feedback loop.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that people have that anymore, because people have like a better understanding.
Internet's fucking killing a lot of that.
Yeah, of sexuality. And
Right.
it's like,
Right.
that, if you're indulging in it in a healthy way with consenting people and stuff, it's like you can find a community of people, even if it's just online.
Or a person who's kind of fucked up that way can go online and read about this shit, and then they can figure out on their own kind of what it is they're going through and why this is not a good path to go through and what this means, and might be able to dissolve it without even having to talk to anybody.
Yeah, because you can see
you can
that you're not the
resolve that
only
issue.
person, that there
Right.
were other people that had that.
All you gotta do is just look at places in the developing world where they have real restrictive cultures and religions and stuff. They tend to fucking do weird shit. You know what I mean? Because there's lots of single males that will never reproduce. They won't be able to find women because they're in societies where one guy has 3 or 4 women. You know what I mean? If you're low income, you can't buy a wife. Those dudes end up lashing out. They go fucking berserk. That's what, and they exhibit that same kind of behavior. You know what I mean? Rape culture is fucking the modern description of that, even though I think that's a misnomer. What it is you have involuntarily celibate men malfunctioning is really a better way, kind of like a form of insanity. And ignorance happening in the same, with superstitions and shit. Superstitions about sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, we've seen that with even a lot of the serial killers we cover, particularly BTK, because I'm still reading about him right now. Whereas you could tell that even though he had a fairly normal childhood, he had these, he had what is today considered a pretty normal, sexual fetish. He was into BDSM and stuff like that, but
he was in a society that wouldn't allow him to
right,
resolve
it was
that.
like something that wasn't really considered, normal or something. So it just became like,
it got worse. It metastasized.
Yeah. So I definitely think that was kind of his problem.
And then he couldn't get it out of his system, so it just got more deeply ingrained into him over time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't just some flight of fancy.
Yeah.
It became his sexual identity.
Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting thing anyway. That
you never want to get too fucking. You don't ever want to go down too far any kind of rabbit hole. You want to be moderate in everything. And these dudes are not moderate.
Yeah, you just gotta kind of like
chill the fuck out.
And keep kind of on.
Stop taking shit so seriously.
Keep on a level fucking field. You know what I mean? It's good sometimes to like kind of especially in like the fucking crazy ass times we're living in now. It's kind of good sometimes to just kind of like get outside yourself and
look at the damn big picture.
Look at the big picture, and also kind of like unplug for a little while. It's like, it's okay if you don't want to like sit there and watch shit about the fucking coronavirus for 24/7 and like get all fucking stressed out and worried about it. It's like, man, go eat a donut and watch some fucking MST3K or something like that. It's just like, it's okay to not be like that. I was thinking about it earlier because I was thinking, before any of this like fucking pandemic shit happened, back in the day when I used to like hang out with my grandma a lot, when I was living with my grandmother, she was terrified of hurricanes, right? So every time we had hurricane season and there was a hurricane that developed, and they develop way out in the Atlantic, and every time that would happen, she would wig the fuck out because she was sure that it was going to hit us. And
my grandmother was the same way.
For days and days and days, she would just watch nothing but the Weather Channel.
Yeah.
And watch as it was approaching. And then she'd watch all the models. It's like, look, it might come in. And I'm like, look, if you got bottled water in your house, you got flashlights and batteries and shit like that, it's like, there's nothing you can do. Sitting there watching it, worrying about it, isn't going to help anything. As long as you've taken precautions, that is literally all you can do. You can't control it. I know people have this thing where they want to control everything, and I think that's been the whole thing with like the pandemic, with everybody just rushing out and buying everything in sight because they feel like that's all they can do to like maintain some kind of modicum of control over things, even though you're not really. But I kind of feel like, because staying home and not doing anything, which is what they're telling everybody to do, that's stressing people out because people like to feel like they have some kind of control over their life, but I mean, you don't.
There's different ways to look at the shit.
So just like chill out.
I see this kind of stuff and I don't really feel any stress. To me, it's just I thrive in this kind of stuff, but that was my upbringing. You know what I mean? Fucking the first things I did, you know, I came up in a military school, and then the very first things I did pretty much as an adult is go to war, you know, in the infantry. So fucking disaster and apocalypses, I was just fucking, that's candy to me, you know. But also, you know, I was really, really at one with fucking dying and other people dying and living and dying and kill or be killed. And it's just kind of, I've just kind of resigned myself to that fate. We all eventually die anyway. So I don't feel the kind of stress, I think, that a lot... And there's a lot of you out there, especially you military guys, know exactly what I'm talking about. Stress can be very good. It can be very good for you.
You need some of it.
There are certain kinds of stresses that are very good. These are normal stresses, okay, from my point of view. Because for me, the stress of survival is normal. A lot of people aren't used to that. They're worried about paychecks and shit. I was worried about fucking bullets, you know, crap like that. All right. This is normal stress. I was kind of built to fucking deal with this. I can deal with this. You know what I mean? Because it's something I can grab on with my hands. I had a harder time with fucking jobs and paying bills and shit. And fucking dealing with banks. Because that's like that's not a concrete problem. It's more of a... It's a notional problem. You know what I mean?
In some ways, like, I don't know. I don't enjoy that, obviously, but I tend to only... And I think that this is just as I've gotten older and kind of, like, chilled out some. I still get really stressed out, but I tend to only get stressed out about shit I have control over. Like, oh my God, I don't have enough money to, you know, pay my bills this month. I need to, like, find another gig. I need to do this, that. So I stress out about that. Shit like this, like hurricanes or fucking, you know, pandemics or whatever. Yeah. I don't stress out about that because I can't do anything about it. Nothing I do is going to change the course of the hurricane or, you know, change the fact if I get the disease or not.
You could say we're both resigned, but we're resigned in different ways.
For different reasons.
She's saying she can't do anything about it, and I'm saying I can do something about it. That's just the way I look at it.
I'm just saying I can't do anything about it.
Because I had this experience before. Yeah. I can live outside for fucking months and months. I can ride horses. I can fucking make shit. I can catch fish. You know what I mean? I can make camps. I've done it. That was just part of it. So if civilization were to fucking disappear, I'd go Mad Max quick. And would be comfortable.
Yeah, I know.
And I could show you how to do it.
Well, that, you know, it's not really a big deal. Well, yeah. And
it's a very low stress life.
Well,
really,
yeah.
You just become like the Indians. You become like a hunter-gatherer. It's so much harder to be a damn farmer. It's a lot harder.
Well, yeah.
Because now you have to till soil. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a lot more work.
Yeah, but if you're just in the hunter-gatherer mode, a lot of the time just walking and sleeping. You know, putting trot lines.
Yeah, I mean, as
long
as you're by the fucking
if you have water, you have food.
And like I said, I can eat fish every day. I don't care.
Yeah.
And they're easy to catch.
And then, you know, fucking once everybody dies off and it's just cool people left, I'm gonna call them cool people. Things like, horses might make a comeback if it goes back to the... And here's another thing. If we were to lose the energy sector, people talk, we'd have windmills and solar. That's fucking fantasy. You will never be able to run this society, this civilization as it is now, using wind and solar. The energy requirements, the energy demands are too great. If the fuel companies and the oil companies went out of business, real quickly we'd be back in the 1880s. And when you're in the 1880s, you can't support a population this big. So that means hundreds of millions of people would die quickly. You wouldn't be able to feed them all. And you can't run a modern city without electricity. And that's where that electricity is coming from. It's mostly coal, you know. And we don't have enough nuclear power plants. They should have done something about that, because you can use nuclear. People are like, well, that nuclear waste. You can send nuclear waste into space. You can send it down to a mine shaft. That's where it came from. There's all kinds of fucking uranium down there. And that's where do you think uranium came from? It's a natural element. But all that waste, you can put it down to the core of the earth, down in the mantle, and they'll never notice it. And or you can, if you want to send it out of space, it's heavy. But anyway, people worrying too much. This is not a fucking extinction level event unless these people fucking wig out and make it one. It's not.
Yeah, that's more what I worry about, is that people are it's gonna be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is not what I'm saying is worried about that I can't do anything about it. I'm just saying it's kind of like a hurricane. Yeah. When it's coming towards you, it's either gonna hit you or it's not. You worrying about it is not gonna do a goddamn thing to prevent that. Yeah. You are just a tiny little person, an insignificant person, and it doesn't matter. So the same thing is that with the pandemic, even though it's not exactly like a hurricane, it's kind of like that because it's like a force of nature. And it's like, you can take precautions just like you can if a hurricane is coming. You can like stay in your house. You can like wash your hands. You can like, minimize your contact with people. But that's pretty much all you can do. I mean, you can't control whether you get it or not, really.
This pandemic, had it hit and we did nothing, the models say about 2 million, 2.4 million people would have died. Most of them old people and people that have medical conditions. And that's not that many when you really kind of think about it in the big picture, but they would have all died within a few weeks of time. That would have caused huge fucking problems.
Well, yeah.
Every day, probably 1 million people probably die in the United States a day. How many people do you think die a day? It's got to be
I don't think it's a million.
Hundreds of thousands probably die.
Maybe.
Natural causes.
I don't know often.
Yeah, just all natural causes. But no, I think they said 2.4 million maximum would have died.
Which, I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot, especially in a short period of time. So they had to do something. All right?
Yeah.
At minimum, they were saying that, if we had done nothing, it would have been, I think they said 1.4 million. That's still a lot.
It is.
So they had to do something. But I'm telling you, they're not gonna shut down society and let society collapse and fucking everything go Mad Max on the behind quarantines.
Well, like I said, you can't
absorb those.
You can't because more people would die. Of course, in that situation.
Almost most. You have like a 70% reduction of the population in a couple years.
I'm just saying that
if you went back to 1800s, which that's what would happen, most people would die. They don't have the skill sets.
I mean, to keep it all in perspective, though, it's like 2.5 million people is a lot in a short period of time. Yeah. But Spanish flu, which we talked about in our pandemic show, that killed what? 500 million?
Something like that.
Or 50 million? I can't remember. But it was like a shit ton more than that.
But the modern house and the modern... People say, well, they didn't have electricity back in the 1800s and you still had big cities. Yeah, but it was very different back then. Those cities had horses and they had a means to run without
Plus they were really dirty and unsanitary.
They were dirty and unsanitary. But every house had like a coal-burning stove or a wood-burning stove where if you had wood, you could keep it warm in the winter. You could also cook your food, Modern apartments don't have that. So you'd say, well, we need to give everybody damn stoves. It takes time to make all that shit. And if you don't have electricity, you can't run an industry to make all that stuff. Things start breaking down, This society isn't set up to make a rapid backwards transition from 2020 back to 1820 in a year. It wouldn't make it. A lot of people would die. They didn't even have the proper education for that. Or the skill set,
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think we're looking at a situation.
They wouldn't allow it to happen.
I just don't think they will.
They wouldn't allow it to happen because, there's a continuance of government's program. There are whole parts of the government in the military and government, I guess you could say, and I think they're inside NORAD right now. That's what I heard, inside of a damn mountain. They will not allow the civilization to totally collapse. They just won't.
Well, yeah, like I said, that's why I'm not worried.
No, I ain't worried about it either. But a lot of people are stressing. They're stressing because they're not getting any money.
Well, that's what I mean. Right. I would be stressed out too.
Sure. You know who's even more stressed out than us? Mexico. I got word from Mexico. They're not getting anything. And there's a bunch of shit they're not showing on TV. They're looting all the damn stores for food, and the Mexican army sits there and watches it because they know that there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
and there's no plan for any kind of stimulus package for the Mexican people. Very, very fucking dangerous. You know who I'm talking about. He's very worried.
Yeah.
And the only thing they can do is just barricade themselves into their house with their beans and rice and their water filters and hope everything's okay.
Yeah.
If that economy collapses and if their currency collapses, they're fucked. And they don't have strategic reserves of oil like we do. So that could be very dangerous. No power.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be able to buy any oil in the fucking market because they wouldn't have any money. They could just get foreign aid, I guess, if it's possible to send them foreign oil aid.
Yeah.
They're just not going to let this go that far. They're going to put everybody to work soon. Mark my words. Nostradamus speaks. Nostradamus speaks, the man who saw tomorrow. And make a whole fucking NBC show.
The man who saw tomorrow, but not really any farther than that.
Just tomorrow. Just tomorrow. Just tomorrow.
Didn't fucking George Carlin, I remember, made a joke about that. He's like, said something about some invention that he was thinking about that was like really lame. And then he's like, look, I'm a visionary. I can see ahead. He's like, problem is it's only about a couple of hours ahead.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, let's
don't
wrap
get
this
too
up.
worked up around it.
That's what I mean. It's
they're
like,
not going to let this go too far.
Just, I know everybody's in a different situation and it's easy
Yeah.
for us to sit here and say, hey, don't worry about it. But it's like, this has taken me 47 years of my life to learn, but it's like worrying doesn't solve anything. It just makes everything worse.
I kind of think there's only going to be another week and a half, 2 weeks of this. That's what I think.
We'll see, like I said. I heard that they said to at least keep things closed until April 24th, which is about another 3 weeks from now.
If they start losing control over certain
But we'll
parts
see
of the
how it goes,
country,
like I
if
said.
things start going bad, they're going to fucking open everything
Everything's
up.
very open-ended at this point. So,
Right.
like I said, I'm just kind of rolling with it.
Because this shit might go pear-shaped at any minute. And when it starts going pear-shaped, mark the words of Nostradamus. They're going to go, okay, fuck that. Everybody get back to work. That's what they're going to do.
I always liked that. That's a very British turn of phrase.
What's it?
Everything going pear-shaped.
Yeah, you get that from fucking Salvador Dali. Everything he fucking draws like melted clocks and shit. Just gotta fucking
They say that in
going
the UK.
fucking pear-shaped.
Everything goes pear-shaped or tits up.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so have a good rest of the Wednesday. Everybody stay safe, healthy out there, and try not to worry about shit. And we'll be back to talk to you again tomorrow.